You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
The Extraordinary Phenomenon Investigations Council presents Epic Voyages. Come join us as we enter and experience the great mysteries of the world with tonight's host,
Bruce and Dani Fenton.
Too much to learn, you say. Cover up is fine, that's your plan, not mine. I'm ready to be told. Secrets to unfold. It's our time to come of age. Time for truth to turn the page. We wanna be inside the dark, live within a question mark. Are they your friend or foe? Tell me now. You need to know. Need to know. Need to know.
Hello and welcome to Epic Voyages Radio, live on Inception Radio Network, Monday nights, 9 p.m. EST, 8 p.m. CST, 7 p.m. MST, and 6 p.m. PST. Now being rebroadcast on the Dark Matter Radio Network, Friday nights at 8 p.m. EST and 5 p.m. PST. Before introducing tonight's special guest, I do want to just do a quick bit of news from the network. We have Ken Cherry has recently released a really special book. It's released as part fiction, but there's an awful lot of facts in this book, so keep that in mind when you're reading through. The title is Mark Slade Investigates, the Stephenville UFO, and it's all about some events that happened back in January 2008. This is down in Stephenville, Texas, where astounded witnesses saw a series of unexplained lights in the sky. Strange craft, chases by military jets involved, and a series of peculiar events that followed. The book details with some pretty controversial information. It's one of the most documented UFO cases in US history, in fact. The story is basically that Mark Slade comes in as the investigator, and having spent a lifetime in UFO research, he starts out with a simple investigation, which quickly turns into an intricate web of government conspiracies and an evil plot that potentially threatens the very existence of humanity. As Slade digs deeper into the mystery, he finds his life is on the line, and he must go on the run as he dodges government agents and mysterious men in black. To expose the nefarious plan before it's too late, Mark Slade has to sort of delve into the deeper aspects of this Stephenville UFO case and discovers a sinister plot involving shadow government agencies that are kind of vying with each other for control of the country. Ken Cherry has woven an intricate blend of facts along with fiction that shine a light on an ominous chapter of American history, proving that not everything is as it seems. As Whitley Strieber, the New York Times best-selling author of Communion, an Alien Hunter, calls the book, he says it's chillingly possible, whilst best-selling author and researcher Jim Mars calls it an absorbing thriller that presents new insights into the still unexplained events at Stephenville, Texas, back in 2008. What more could one want? The book is available now from the Epic website, and also, of course, all good retailers, and, you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. So, tonight, we're going to have Bob Newton, a.k.a. the Rogue Researcher, founder of an international collaborative network of researchers that are working under the banner of USOCS, USOKS, and a long-time specialist in, turning over the stones that others prefer to ignore, we might say. We're lucky as well to catch Bob literally as he's just arrived back from a research trip out in Peru. So there's a whole heap of new finds for him to discuss. So welcome, Bob Newton. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Bruce. How you doing?
Very well, thank you. Yeah, and it's sort of really lucky that we've managed to catch you sort of almost fresh off the plane.
Yeah, I'm real fresh off the plane. I got back 3 days ago. Went from wintertime, a mild winter, to a blast furnace, it seems like. So I'm lucky I had a few days to recover and adjust to the climate.
Because you've been based sort of fairly high up in the Andes, haven't you, from what I understand?
Yeah, about 9,000 feet up in the Cauca region of the Sacred Valley.
So it's from up there in the sort of cooler weather, sort of down by a huge drop into the boiling furnace.
Boiling furnace of the Colorado Desert. They've had some weird weather up here too. Right. It rained until about 5 days ago. It's been cold, chilly. They've had hailstorms here, 3-4 feet in the middle of the afternoon. And then 5 days ago, somebody flipped a switch, and we are in summer. So it's...
Well, we're glad that we managed to catch you. I mean, it just sort of worked out because, of course, your internet connection in Peru was speculative at best, wasn't it? So I don't think we were going to be able to get you from live in the mountains, unfortunately.
No, it was pretty hard. The internet there, it does work. It's a little slow, but they rely too much. Well, they have to, because the internet grew faster than their system. But they rely on the microwave relay towers, and yeah, it was a pain to do something like this. I'm glad I was able to get here on time.
Because you had some trouble with, I know you told me you had some trouble getting the
they canceled my flight in Lima. They put us up rather nicely at the Sheraton, but still that was full 24 hours. And then I had an extra flight to get back in because we were farmed out to different airlines. But I survived. And yeah, I'm glad we were able to catch this window of opportunity for sure.
Well, I was going to start by asking you, because I know a fair bit about your background, but can you give us a little bit of an overview of how you sort of came to be involved with ancient mysteries research and, obviously generally alternative subjects and those kind of investigations? I mean, where does that kind of stem from in your past?
I'd have to say I was drawn into this ancient mysteries the day I picked up my first National Geographic's magazine and saw the first color pictures of the pyramids in Giza. In reflection, it seems like it's been downhill ever since. By the time I was 9, I had devoured 2 sets of encyclopedias, Britannica and World Book, and I'd read a bunch of the classics, Jules Verne, Edgar Rice Burroughs, all the Sherlock Holmes books I could get my hands on, and was pretty lucky. We had a full library in Germany. I guess I should have said that. This was back in the late 50s and up to mid-60s. I did a lot of reading, but the one book that set me off on a trail I wasn't really aware of until about 6 years ago when I reread the book, and that was the book by Colonel James Churchward, The Lost Continent of Mu. After reading it the first time, I did as much cross-referencing as I could do with my limited database, my 2 sets of encyclopedia. I don't know if I mentioned they were Britannica and World Book, but back in that day, they were a big thing. I took my research as far as a 9-year-old could. It was kind of a secret operation because the message I got from reading the book made me question what I'd been taught in Sunday school and church, and that was being preached by my mother. And my mother was a very fanatical religious nut that took the Bible literally, and he didn't question the existence of God or any of that stuff around her at that time. But the questions had been seeded and planted, and I have to say they grew thanks to my mother's lack of comprehension of what I was trying to say, or I should say questioning. So instead of watching television over there in Germany, which was rather boring because it was in German, I found reading and this kind of stuff to be my way out of boredom in a lot of ways.
So did this initial kind of entrance into the subject, did it lead you on then to do some research of sites in the US first, where you were based? I mean, so how did it kind of flower into more, I guess, on the ground research and local research? Did you find yourself captivated by any of the sites up, where you were, or how did things kind of develop from there?
Well, it's kind of strange. I was always after that stretch, even when we came back to the States, I was still, picking things up, the interesting things about the Native Americans. And eventually I settled out in Colorado. My dad had been transferred to Fort Carson, which is in Colorado Springs. And when we first got here, we arrived in April, and I think maybe 1 or 2 days right after what they call a spring dump, and it was about 5 feet of really heavy, wet snow. And the first thing I saw was a picture of the Garden of the Gods. Well, of course, Pikes Peak's right there. It's beautiful too, especially when it's covered in snow. But the Garden of the Gods really, I have to say, has been one of the major influences that led me to digging even deeper into these links that go pretty, deep. They go a lot deeper than what we think.
Can you give us a bit of an overview? What would someone find then if they were to explore the Garden of the Gods? Because I know that you kind of do some, you offer some tours and walks in the area, and I mean, what is there that people would typically see if they went on an excursion there? What's the big draw, would you say?
Well, a little history about the garden is pretty good. The garden was officially discovered, and I cough on that one, in 1859 by a couple of surveyors, M.S. Beach and Rufus Cable. They were surveying the area around Colorado City, which is sandwiched between present-day Colorado Springs and Manitou Springs. It's a real old section of the city, and they were trying to figure out which way to expand. But when they got into the realm of the Garden of the Gods, I forget which one of them said it, but he says, "Man, this is a garden for the gods," And somehow it's been changed over time to Garden of the Gods. But what triggered my interest into the garden, which over the decades it's really become a sacred place to me, and I was drawn back to it oddly by a documentary, I believe. Jerry Wills and his wife put it together on Marquihuasi, which is in northern Peru. And it's located about 14,000 feet above sea level. And on the formations were animals and beings and princesses. And my light went on, and I thought about the garden, because I'd been going to the Garden of the Gods for 25, 30 years. And every time I went there, there was always something that I looked at, and I'm going, well, maybe is that really what I'm seeing? But the label on the place is, of course, it's a natural park. So I coaxed my sister into going back with me. She had a good camera and had a good camera eye, and I talked her into going down there and walking around and investigating it with me. I forget how many times we went down, 5 or 6 that summer of 2012. and some of the pictures that were just coming out, like the moray eel, the more I started seeing this stuff, and I'm going, wow, we got it in Peru, and now I have stuff in front of me that is just beyond description in a lot of ways, because the moray eel is it's cylindrical. It's been carved out of the sandstone, I'm assuming. I wouldn't know their method, really. But this thing's over 100 feet tall, 150 feet tall. And that was one that really got me. That was different than the kissing camels. It just blew me away. But
these are some pretty major size, like shaped rocks, aren't they? That you were telling me about previously. That some of these, like you said, the kissing camels. That these are quite large rock sort of structures, aren't they?
Well, yeah. These formations in the Garden of the Gods are actually layers of sandstone that have been lifted vertically from their horizontal position. So they're standing straight up in the air. 500 feet tall, I guess, is the tallest one at its highest point. And on them, the big one is the kissing camels. I mean, that's what we were told that they were. But the kissing camels there's always been something about them that I just didn't quite feel that they were camels. There's one angle you can look at them from, and the one does look like a camel. But when you come around and you really start looking at it, to me, it looked like an eagle, because you could actually see wings and that kind of stuff on it, and a beak, and it looks like one of them had eroded off, and didn't quite look like an eagle, So there was some room for interpretation. Until, Richard Gabriel, correct?
Yes, yeah, I've known Richard for some years. Yeah.
Well, he ran some of the pictures through his NC2 or NC2, I believe it is, the light processing, the light spectrum processes that he uses. That lifts the images out of stone that really is hard to see. And, excuse me, the process is amazing, because when he...
because he kind of uses color overlays, isn't it, to bring out hidden aspects of the images, isn't it? It's a kind of a technique for revealing kind of very faded etching and faded designs, from the way I understand it.
Well, yeah, it's different light filters. I'm not sure of how he attaches them or, runs them through the process, but excuse me, I needed a drink. He uses green tones, sand tones, and the one that he did that really makes it stand out for us, that shows that it is not an eagle, it's not a camel, it is actually either a winged type dragon or something similar to a griffin. I don't know if you know what they look like.
Yeah. I think they turn up on a few of these noble English houses on their flags and things, to the griffin. So I mean, probably with Google they can find some images on, particularly on royal and noble houses. It used to be a common kind of symbol, didn't it?
Yeah, but these are so large. I mean, right next to the right next to the so-called kissing camels, there's actually a very large sleeping giant. I call it the sleeping Buddha myself, but that's what really started alerting me. And I honestly, Vicky, I drug her through that park quite a bit, saying, "Oh, take a picture of this, take a picture of that." But some of the stuff that she picked out that I didn't even see is amazing. I mean, there's a cutthroat trout rock that is standing straight up in the air. We have I call it the anglerfish with an eye. I mean, the eye is definitely, you can tell it has been worked, and there's no way that the proportions, that figure hasn't been worked. But erosion is taking its toll on a lot of it. We have elephants. We have a maiden with her dog. The moray eel still gets me, along with of course the dragon. But
and this kind of, well, I suppose the interest in engravings in stone, and obviously the remains that sort of in that respect very visible, has kind of, I guess, led you on to some other well-known sites around the world, hasn't it, with controversial engravings. I know that you've written a bit on the walls at Carryong, which our previous guests, Stephen and Evan, were talking about a bit, over in Australia. And I know that's another site that you've ended up kind of spending some time studying. Not from being there, I don't believe. You haven't actually been to Australia, have you, from what I understand? But from the images and from what's available, I know you became quite involved with researching the symbols there. I mean, can you give us a bit of a insight into what you how you got involved and what you found out about the site and your interest in that?
Well, the symbols and symbology is what's led me to all of it, to be honest with you. The book, Lost Continent of Mu, and then cross-referencing a bunch of the stuff that he wrote, linked me to the Hopi and the symbology. And one of them that really stood out was the swastika, because I lived in Germany during that time. And of course, Hitler and the Third Reich, the swastika was their sign, and I was really puzzled. It was like, wait a minute, how did this symbol get over here? And then how did the Hopi, Navajo, and quite a few different, the Cherokee have that cross? The
yes.
So when I guess it was about 3 years ago, let me step back even a little bit further. About 8 years ago, a friend of mine on Facebook told me about the glyphs at Carryong. Well, back then I tried to find information on it. All I could find was all the debunking stuff on it. So I did find a little bit that the Gilroys had released, and that was about it. That's all I could find. So it sat on the back burner for a little while, because I hadn't actually seen pictures of the glyphs. So 5 years went by, and I'd been collecting a little bit more about the symbology connections between all the races around the globe. And one day I saw this video that was posted, and it was Stephen Evan Strong's video where they were explaining the glyphs and breaking down, I think it's Ray Johnson's interpretation or his translation of the glyphs. Well, one of them stepped out and slapped me in the face, and it's the Celtic cross that's on, I believe it'd be the right wall, right as you're going into the glyphs, and that stuck with me. So I went, whoa, man, this is really interesting. So I contacted Evan. I found out he had a Facebook page, and I contacted him, and I got to talking with them, and I think I had a Skype with him and Steven and everything. And I asked them if they had some really good pictures that I could send to Klaus Dona, and have him look at them, because, the guy's got an eye. I really respect him a lot. He's become a pretty good friend. So anyway, Klaus, I sent him the PDF after I looked at it and went, whoa. And he opened it up while we were talking on Skype, and the first thing he said was, wow, look at the patina, And I got a few goosebumps at the time. And, well, it moved on and on and on, and eventually I guess we got enough interest from Klaus and his friend that has that technology, where they can scan from outer space and scan around. So they started poking around the region there, and Klaus's friend found a tomb, which has been identified as a tomb with bones. I mean, Klaus has spoken about it a couple times on the radio. I don't know if anybody's caught that, but
seen the images of the tunnel. I don't know if other people have out there, but of the sort of what was the burial chamber, which is a kind of a fairly narrow tunnel, isn't it, from what I could see, but going down into an area not far from the glyphs, is it? But it's not quite in that set of walls, but I believe it's very nearby. But there's this kind of tunnel into.
Well, the actual location of the one that I say we that they found. Okay. Has not been disclosed.
Oh, this is another one. Okay.
No, there are a bunch of shafts and stuff that are around the glyphs. Mm-hmm. They've been explored and all that. But no, this is a separate site.
Okay.
It's not an easy one to get to. It's very dangerous. So I wouldn't be walking into some of them places you think, because these guys are pretty smart. There's a booby trap, I believe, that was triggered by an earthquake at one time. They said the last major one was in 1950 something, but it could have been sooner than that because, of records and everything like that. But it's been around for a while. It's going to be very hard to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I understand from some of the reports out there that there are tunnel systems there that, again, like you're saying, that they're hard to get into. I know there was one that Stephen Evan talk about that you have to almost climb off a cliff to get into the entrance to, and even then it becomes so narrow from where over time, a massive amount of time, the earth movements have kind of squeezed the walls in too much, and so like you say, these tunnel systems aren't easy to get into anymore. They're and obviously what might once have been easy is now sort of a cliff face and things. So yeah, it sounds like the area may be riddled with tunnels, but that they're not easy to get into.
No, and when you do get into them, like you say, will you get out?
Yeah,
that's true. The bad part about it. But the symbology on that wall has created a lot of controversy, as you know. Stephen Evans supplied me with some hand-drawn panels of the whole of every symbol that's on the walls, and we had them sent to Cairo. And looked at, and pretty much told that they were authentic, but they wouldn't officially recognize them because they are found out of context. And I think that's the same thing they told Ray Johnson. They authenticated his part of the translations, but they wouldn't officially say anything because it's found out of Egypt, outside the borders of Egypt.
It makes it automatically very controversial. So they don't expect to find them there, so they don't want to say that they're 100% genuine, because it opens up a whole can of worms for the Egyptologists.
Yeah, well, the thing is in my research, I found that it was widely known among the elite circles up until the 1920s and 1930s that they were there. There was a lot of the people who had the money that would go there. And then all of a sudden, it seems like it was a sweep right through Australia. There was a silence on all of it. It was like everybody was attacked that was trying to bring them to light or keep them in the light. And they went dormant for 25 years or so, until somebody started talking about them again. And then they were kind of
controversial, from being accepted to being controversial, and then the slow process back towards accepted.
Right. Well, this time we hope, that whoever, we have somebody that stepped up and has been offering translations and claims it is, and I believe he's absolutely correct, that it is Proto-Egyptian. Which, when we start talking proto, that means they weren't Egyptian. They were somebody else. And the Egyptians are the ones who got the credit for whatever this previous culture was. I have my suspicions, of course, you know that, but
because it's easier to kind of focus on the cultures that are already recognized and known, isn't it, than to try and look for a predecessor culture that the historians really don't want to recognize, and don't like the idea of having to say that they've got it wrong for so long, and that that there really were these advanced. Well, advanced obviously is a vague word in some ways, but certainly civilizations and cultures that had created marvelous things, and that had great understandings in the past, and that precede these Sumerians and the Babylonians and the Egyptians, and that there's this kind of a hesitance now, isn't there, for them to accept that any of these cultures could have existed. So yeah, it's always easier to say it's Egyptian than it's who were these proto-Egyptians.
Exactly. Well, the research is, it's out there. It's just getting a hold of the right research to show you the right, correct picture. And the first thing is learning how to recognize history, and not necessarily time itself, but what layers that history is in. When you throw out the linear timeline, it gives you a better image as we start stacking all this information up. I don't know if you're aware of it, but another find there in Australia that Klaus just announced, I guess about a month ago. I've known about it for a while, but you have to bite your tongue sometimes until it's verified. But he released it that they found a city. It's in the proximity of Karyong, and it's actually 12 square kilometers.
That's a pretty big site. That's a major settlement.
Yes, it is. It's a very big site. Really, when you look at the region and the history that we know, really a lot of it we know only because the Aboriginal people, the elders and stuff, have started releasing some of their Dreamtime stories, and the myth that we can sift through and connect it with the stuff that we've pulled up from the American Southwest. Like the Anasazi actually is what started this for me. The hieroglyph and the symbology was when I went to Mesa Verde back in 1987, I think it was, and the Anasazi I'd been hearing about, a little bit, and you catch a small documentary on him, so I really didn't know a whole lot. But I found out, I found this map one time. It was the Orion Zone. Gary David worked on the Orion Zone. And when I saw that, I went, whoa, wait a minute here. This is connecting. And I don't know where I got this information from, but the tip of Orion's spear is actually a place that's called Kincaid's Cave. Are you familiar with Kincaid's Cave?
I recognize the name, but it doesn't immediately bring the information with it. So you'll have to refresh my brain there.
Just a brief scenario or brief picture here. There is an Orion correlation on the Anasazi. That's how they laid out their cities, and at the tip of the spear is where Kincaid's Cave is located. And Kincaid was a guy who was cruising down the Colorado River back in early 1900s, and he spotted something up on a cliff face and decided to climb up there. It was a rather precarious climb, 1,500 vertical feet, something to that effect. But when he got up there, there was a cave, and he went into it, and right away there was all kinds of, he noticed what he called Egyptian hieroglyphs on the wall. And as he went into the cave, he came into mummies, he came into gold, he came into a bunch of different things, and it was all Egyptian to him. That's what he labeled it as. Well, he didn't find his way back, or if he could find his way back, he never took anybody. So the cave is still myth and legend, but it was written up in the local newspapers. But that right there got me, because I know the Anasazis, very old people, and one of the things that really set me off is when I got into the Anasazi myth and their migration myth, was they were told by the gods to go there and rechart the stars. So it's kind of a strange alignment.
Yes. I mean, the idea of having to rechart the stars and suggest maybe something peculiar had happened that had brought this all about. It sort of makes you think of a pole shift or something, perhaps. I mean,
actually, that's why I'm in Peru. I went to Peru. That was one among the reasons, but that was one of my reasons. Is like, why? At the time, I had run some lines on Google Earth using the chakra line that is based in Mesa Verde, and there's a line that you can follow. So I followed it, and I came up, I think it was, almost right on I think 1 degree off, something to that effect, of Easter Island.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and it was, and you know how your curiosity gets fired up, and it's like, why is this line pointing? Because the ancients did that. They left these clues by leaving these lines that you follow and where it ends up. Well, it was like, why is it Easter Island? Of course, Easter Island has all the stonework and the magnificent moai and the strange Rongo language and all that. So I wonder if this is connected to Peru. And I met some people, online that was into the Peruvian history and archaeology and stuff, and I was drawn in by the Gamera theories, and it all added up to the church ward, what we're seeing in Australia, what we're seeing globally, actually. So it was like, well, you can't sit and do this from the armchair. So 2.5 years ago, I made my first trip. And then I just got back from a 16-month trip down there.
Because from my understanding, the Gameras, it's a bit of a family affair, isn't it, with them? That was it. There was an archaeologist, I believe, wasn't it? It was the grandfather of your friend there. I've forgotten the first name. Sorry, Can you give us a little bit of the background? Because I understand that some of the important alignments at Tiwanaku and some of the other controversies kind of stem back to the now deceased, isn't archaeologist Mr. Gamero? Is that right? Can you give us a bit of a background?
Well, Alfredo was an archaeologist. He had a lot of multidisciplined, people that he related with. He was an archaeologist for 60 years himself, and he come up with some very interesting theories, and they blend in with a lot of church ward's work. They complement each other. Some places they conflict, a little bit, but for the most part, Alfredo hit on a piece of ancient history and was able to define it in a way that I have found to be pretty accurate myself. His son, I know, I've met Jesus, and we've had many conversations about this past history in Peru and its connection to Babylonia La Grande, which, according to Church Ward, Babylonia La Grande was one of the great cities of Mu, a very ancient culture in the beginnings of mankind. Which is where I'm at as far as my archaeological perspectives. I'm in layers that definitely you can see roots from the Egyptians growing. You can see the Babylonian roots. You can see quite a few roots of cultures that we have different names for them and different. I don't even know the word for it. It's just all different. It's the same people, but just different. if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I understand. I mean, some of the theories were linked to the idea that these sites in Peru and in South America that were dating back towards 12,000 years or older in some cases, weren't they? If I understand right, I think at Tiwanaku there was a solar alignment that was used to date the site, and that using this alignment, it suggested a construction date of at least 12,000 years ago, and that obviously this led to a lot of controversy in Peruvian archaeology and in global archaeology, didn't it? From what I recall of the story.
Well, Poznansky did a very good job. If those giants, Poznansky and Gamera and Churchward had the internet back in that day, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because I mean, they would be able to really nail a lot of it. And Poznansky, he caught a lot of things that people had walked over, like I think the 10-month lunar calendar or the 13-month lunar calendar. I forget which one it is. I get a little confused when I start getting into those alignments and stuff. But Tiwanaku and Pumapunku is definitely, we're still going to school there. I believe it's been released that they found another pyramid, but I don't think they've started excavating it yet there. It's about 12.
That's right. Yeah, I saw that it's still buried, isn't it? But they've detected the outline of the pyramid or something like that. So you were going to have to wait and see what they find, but that's going to be fascinating as long as it's done in a way where people actually do hear what's found, of course.
Right. Well, Poznansky, he went in there. He was lucky. He went in when he did. He dug I think it was 10 test pits, and I believe he led the charge on cleaning up the the Akapana pyramid, to where we see what there is today. So that, they just piled the dirt over there off to the side and the whole bit. So there's some work to do if they are going to excavate it, because from my research, there should be a lot underneath that surface there because of the flood, which is a whole different thing altogether, is the floods that was caused that. But the years, the age of some of these sites, Bruce, I'm going to have to really, really step back away and add some zeros on it, because I don't believe that 10,000 or 20,000 or even 40,000 years can explain the evolution of the stonework that I've seen in Peru. And I just don't see it. I've thrown the number out there, to my friend Klaus, because he's got artifacts and he's held them that are over 120 million years old, hand and foot.
That's old.
Yeah, I mean, when you find a petrified hand and foot in 120 million year old strata, and it's a humanoid hand, then it really makes you wonder, I mean, how can we accept, a 10,000 or a 12,000 year timeline on things like the pyramids at Giza? I mean, that's like taking a dart and throwing it at the dartboard from 100 feet away and hoping to hit a bullseye, in my opinion.
I mean, one of the problems is of course most people out there will know, is that it's so hard to date stonework. I mean, it's not like carbon dating where you can just take a piece off and burn it. There's only a few limited ways to really get even near to accurate dates. Obviously now we have things like thermoluminescence and stuff, but those rely on the stone being covered and us being the first to uncover it, and all sorts of variables that really rarely are able to meet. When you get to these sites, that you don't know how many times they've been buried and uncovered and buried again, and and you don't know if you're the first person breaking into a place or not. There's all these variables that for stonework it's so difficult. And I know you mentioned patina earlier, and that's helpful, but again, you need some sort of date first to then use the patina as a kind of a dating between stone objects. But none of these things in themselves tend to be good for giving an accurate a date from one method, where you can say, okay, I can just date this stone and say this was constructed 10,000 years ago, and that's it. There's no doubt. I mean, I think rare's the site where anyone's been able to come up with something that is a fully accepted date, unless it's in recorded history, where we refer to other sources. We'll look to see what's in the written records and, what's in the oral stories. And, but on its own, you can't pick up a rock and say, okay, this was used in this building 10,000 years ago, because the rock itself is, of course, probably 1 million years old. So it's a very difficult area. That's
very, very, very difficult. But what I can't say I've discovered. One of my observations I've made here, I keep talking like I'm in Peru, that I made in Peru, was the different stonework and then the degrading of some of it. And I had a conversation with Jesus Gamera one day as we were walking up to Tambo Machai, and right there, it really stood out to me because they describe, Alfredo breaks it down into three worlds. The first world is Hanan Pancha, which is, in his definition, is the layer of stonework that helps identify that period of time, or I should say those periods of deep time. And then his next level is the Urin Pancha. Now, the Urin Pancha is where we're getting a lot of controversy on how in the world did they do it, because it's the stonework that fits together so tight that you can't get, a paper, unless, of course, if there's been an earthquake in the area and it's shaken a few of the stones apart. You can get something there, but for the most part, you can't get a piece of paper to stick in there before it will crumble. It's so tight and beautiful. My belief is a lot of it was molded. And it's not the soft stone theory where they use bird spit and some magic plant out of the jungle to make. To me, it was just another form of cement or concrete, a clay-like material that they were able to mold, and some of it's been heated, so the process is, you can see that it's almost like a fired brick, but they didn't quite use a open fire or something to bake them. And like you're saying, how can you date a stone like that? You can date, like in Göbekli Tepe, I believe is how you say it. We know that it was buried 12,500 years ago, but we don't know when it was constructed.
No, that's right. And there's always this now at the moment, this is open question as to what's the oldest part of that site. How old is the site really? Not just this idea that, as you say, that okay, we know it was there 12,000 years ago and it was buried then, but we really don't know when those people first started building the site at all. And so this, may go back. Well, we don't know, I suppose, but it could go back at least centuries or maybe thousands of years before that date of burial.
Right. Well, if we throw the timeline out, okay, and just completely throw a linear timeline out and years, and trying to say, oh, it's 50,000 years or 100,000 years old, put it in the layers, like this Hanan Pancha and Urim Pancha. As I was walking up, like I was saying at Tambo Machai, I started absorbing this, and I'm going, wait a minute, why are these rocks here looking like they're a ball of clay? You know what I mean? That has been packed, and part of the facing covering had already fallen off on some of these rocks. And I'm going, wait a minute, this looks like a mix. This is a mix. And I asked Jesus, I said, Jesus, I says, is that some Urin Pancha that's being passed off as a Urin Pancha layer or a Hanan Pancha? Because they're saying that the Hanan Pancha is the stuff that is kind of cut out of all these other stone formations. They're fascinating. Some of them, it's like, how in the world did they cut that out of it, But these are pieces of stone that looks like balls of clay to me that had been kneaded up, like you would bread and everything, and stacked on each other, and then they come back with a little tool and separate them, cut them with a wire or something like that, and then come back with a little tool and make that groove around each stone. It's like something's not right here. We have to look at this a little deeper. And when I look at those stones, they talk about Genesis, and I look at those stones, and those have got to be Genesis type rocks. They've been around since the beginning. You find them all over the world too. It's just they're not identified correctly.
I mean, and the interesting thing, I probably won't go too deep into this next. I know we've got a few minutes before the break, but one of the things in Peru that really has caused a lot of controversy is the obvious difference, isn't it, between these layers? As you say, I mean, there's some quite startling difference between different types of stonework, and that yet the current mainstream view is that almost everything was built by the Incas. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? How that's come about, and how much reality there is in the Incas being involved in some of these sites, and what are your thoughts on that area?
Well, the Inca, I've seen some of their walls that they did do, and they are magnificent pieces of work. I mean, some of them, they did their best to make it look like the Urin Pancha, but the Inca didn't do it all. There is no way in the world. I mean, what we see here is a degrading of technology. And the Inca, they're the ones, how it works out when the conquerors come in. It's his story from that point on. Even up till today, sadly, the archaeological schools are teaching that the Inca did all this. And you have students coming out that are going, you have to have 3 years of archaeological studies to become an official tour guide here. So you have this flood every year of tour guides coming out that are grabbing a hold of the tourists, when they walk up to the gate and everything, and they tell the story that the Inca did it. The Inca did it. I was at Ollantaytambo a couple weeks ago, double checking the ones we call the Gamera stones, which are in the Temple of the Moon, or Temple of the Sun, excuse me. That's high up the steps there in Oli. And I was sitting there just staring at these rocks because I've been studying at them. They're pink granite, and I'm really amazed at it's pink granite, because everything else around there is diorite or andesite or something to that effect. Well, this one tour guide, she was little younger than me. I won't call her an old lady or anything like that, but she's telling this American couple that the stones there is where the Inca left them. And there's no way in the world, in my mind, that the Inca would have left these pieces of pink granite scattered out like that all over the place and just left something unfinished. So I said, well, excuse me. I said, but don't you think that these rocks could have been scattered like this because of a massive earthquake?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I know it was rude, but, I've been hearing it for hours. I've been sitting there for about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, just looking at this whole area, trying to absorb what happened. And she says, the last earthquake we had was in 1970 something, yada, yada, yada. And I said, no, I'm talking about one that was maybe 1 million years ago. And this look come over her face, and she says, no. She says, the Inca left them here. I says, well, can I ask you one more question? I said, where did this pink granite come from? And she points up to the quarries that are up above Ollantaytambo there, where they drug down a bunch of the stone there, but they didn't drag that pink granite from up there, because I have friends that's been up there a few times and they still can't find any pink granite. So they're telling these narrow-minded stories to the tourists and getting away with it, basically. And she, I got to tell you, that lady goes, well, listen, don't question me or something like that. She says, I'm an archaeologist and I know my stuff.
So you just have to believe me. That's it. Yeah, I have the qualifications.
Yeah. So I've challenged a few of them. I did it at Saxe, and it's by accident, because they say something so absurd in front of me, and there's no way I can buy it. They're saying that Sacsayhuaman was built in 66 years. And when you look at
enormous, isn't it? I mean, for people that haven't seen images of it, I mean, some of the blocks there are, if I remember rightly, the largest ones are over 100 tons, aren't they? I think they're up to 200 tons.
Yeah, right around 90, 100 tons. I mean, they're massive. And when you really look at these stones, I mean, there's no way, in my opinion, the Inca did this. And I have my reasons for that. Maybe after the break, I can share you a little bit about the puma head that supposedly Sacsayhuaman is. I don't know, how much time do we have before the break?
We've just got a couple of minutes, so I mean, we'll pick up again, more on the same area after the break, because I think it's an important subject. This, I suppose challenging the claim that the Inca did all of this, is a really important aspect of the story. Because, of course, if you accept that, it means that all of these sites are in recorded history, and you could say are fully understood, and that there's no mystery, etc. That we know enough about the Inca to know what their culture was about, etc. So it's important for us to sort of clarify why these sites are so interesting, and that's because, as you've said, the evidence suggests that they're not Inca, and that they are, in some cases, much older, and in some cases, the results of cultures that seem to have completely vanished without much trace beyond their stonework. And some stories.
Exactly. Well, now let me clarify that a little bit. The Quechua people and your people that are living in the valley, the Sacred Valley, that's where I lived there for 16 months. And I met quite a few of the locals around there. Very nice people. And they seem to know their whole history. I mean, they know the giants were there. They're not afraid to, when I asked them, hey, what do you know about the giants? And, well, they were here. And we're just missing the evidence. I mean, some of the stuff that I found while I was there this time via Google Earth and personal observations, something was there a long time ago, and they really love to make this earth art, shadow art that is on such a massive scale. It's really hard to fathom. Have you ever heard that we're just too small to see it?
Yes, sorry, yes, that's right.
Sorry.
You hear me? Yes, there's times where you could be standing next to something that's incredibly interesting, incredibly important, but it's so large that on the face of it, there's nothing there.
You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin. Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Are you a fan of Inception Radio Network? Do you reckon it's the best alternative talk radio station on the planet? Well, if you do, head to facebook.com/Inception Radio Network and like the page. Tell your friends, spread the word, and keep listening to the best.
Hello, IRN listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic.
Hello, I'm Pat Usford, inviting you to tune in to Epic Voyages every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on Inception Radio Network. To find out more about Epic and how you can become a member, visit epicvoyagers.com.
EPIC is Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council, the forum for scholars, experts, and those fascinated by and involved in the study of ancient civilizations, conspiracies, cryptozoology, ETs, and UFOs, fringe science, the paranormal, and all manner of extraordinary phenomena. Please join Epic as we examine the mysteries of the world and beyond on epicvoyagers.com. And for updates on the upcoming interactive video presentations, the latest news and discussion on the Epic Forum, as well as research, investigations, and membership opportunities.
Epic Voyages program schedule is on the Inception Radio Network. Thank you for joining us.
Howdy, this is Joe Mars. I'm inviting you to tune in to Epic Voyages, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern, Monday nights, right here on Inception Radio Network. To find out more about Epic and how you can become a member, visit epicvoyagers.com. That's epicvoyagers.com.
Hello, everyone. Dani Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Okay, Bob, so we're back from the break, and I'm hoping we can dig a little bit more into some of, I suppose, the controversies in Peru that have been making the news lately. And, of course, we've already touched a bit on this. This is the fact that the Inca didn't do it all. But there's sort of more to this story, isn't there? I mean, one of the articles that people would have seen out there is this revelation about the Paracas skulls and the elongated skulls that have been found in Peru, and also claims about testing on these. And this has been a kind of a big story for during the last year or so. Can you give us a bit of insight? So I understand that you've seen some of the elongated skulls, and that you've spoken to some of the experts in this area. How does this tie in with the sites and with these, with the megaliths and with some of these strange, rock art things that you've seen? And how do you link these strange skulls into that sort of background?
Oh, boy. Well, the elongated skulls are definitely a mystery. The ones in Paracas, I've seen, goodness gracious, I think I have pictures of all of them, full rotation pictures. I've studied them, and it's beyond definition. I think it's a whole new species. The Paracas skulls, they show a few things that we see in the other elongated skulls that are here. I mean, we have elongated skulls in Cusco, and they are actually of a smaller variety, adult elongated skulls that are, you can just you can fit them in one hand. The Paracas skulls opened the door for me. I think the first time I saw anything about those was actually a show that Klaus Dona had back in the early 2000s called Ancient Mysteries or something. That's when they were first presented to me. And it's like, whoa, look at these things, But as we did our research in Peru, we stumbled across this little fella called, they named him Waiki, and they call him the Little Alien. And after being at the museum there a couple times, spending 3 or 4 hours just looking at this guy, we have to look at these things and say, hey, we have a different species that was on this planet. And unfortunately, every so-called DNA testing attempt that's been made has turned and blown up into a fiasco. I forget how many years ago it was, back in 2011 or something like that. I hosted a once a month radio show that's actually turned into a twice a month radio show. And I had this so-called expert on the show and quite a few times. And I just couldn't fathom why the DNA testing hadn't been done on these skulls. So I suggested that maybe we start a drive, which I do regret to this day, because the money I don't think was ever spent on the DNA testing, which has really clouded the honest research that we're doing into finding out where these people came from, whether they were actually Earthling or maybe a hybrid of some kind. I mean, I have seen a picture of an elongated skulled being and skeleton attached, which is
that's quite rare, isn't it? Because usually it's just the skulls.
Yes, see, that's the thing about the Paracas skulls, and actually all the elongated skulls that we've seen, except for the cradle-boarded ones. They seem to leave those bodies together if it's been cradle-boarded. But we asked forever, I mean, come on, where's the skeleton hat that goes with this elongated skull? And it wasn't until just a couple months ago, my friend David Wilkinson in Calca that I met there is an avid researcher. He's been researching in Peru for 14 years. And he had the chance to see this mummy, but from what I saw in that picture, man, they are not us. Okay, their vertebrae is like twice the size of ours. Their discs are different. I mean, I know the spine. I have spine injuries, so I've studied a little bit about the spine, and I know it's not us. Their hips, the hips and pelvis and all that are about twice our size. Their legs, definitely longer. Unfortunately, the mummy was not stretched out. It was buried in the traditional knees to chin position with the arms up to the side. So after seeing that, and then of course going and seeing Waikiki and taking all the pictures and analyzing the pictures, going over the pictures over and over and over again, we are definitely looking at a different species. Whether
and
they're...
Would you say that they're, are they taller than us? I mean, does this relate to Legends of Giants, or were they just a very different build to us? I mean, from what you could see with the body, was there any way to estimate the potential height or not?
Well, my first impression that really stuck into my mind was, am I looking at a Patagonia giant, which would have been about a 9-footer according to the accounts of the Spanish when they first encountered them. So, that's one of the questions. Yes, it's definitely taller, but I can't say it's, the size of the one that Klaus Dona has the heel bone of when they scaled it out. It would have been a 29-footer, 30-footer. So, excuse me. But when we look at that elongated skull, and then we go to Waikiki, which could have been maybe 2 foot tall, standing, at the most, and he has an elongated skull also.
So there seems to be different types of being with this elongated skull. Then there are variations of hominids or whatever they are exactly, but different types from what you've seen.
Well, Waikiki and the baby, see, that's another thing that a lot of people don't know, is when you go into the museum, there's a little bundle right off to the left of Waikiki, which is a little elongated skull alien there. I'm going to have to say he's alien because not necessarily from outer space, but he's definitely alien from anything I've ever seen. But next to it is this little bundle, and that was mummified with them. So, I mean, even though Waikiki was killed, the forensics, I believe, came back. There was some testing done on it, and a documentary, if I'm not mistaken, which I haven't seen yet because I was in Peru, but it came back that Waikiki died from a blow to the head. And you can see that. I did see the pictures of the x-rays, and you can see where the whole left side of Waikiki's head had been caved in. And also the little baby that's next to him, the face plates are missing from his face, but the skull, the skull cap and everything is still wrapped up in the mummy material, the textiles. But I have a picture looking down through the faceplate of the baby, and you can see the top of the base of the where the spine, the cervical part of the spine meets the base of the skull, and it's not us, man. I've never seen anything like that as far as the spine goes in my life. I'm not the expert, but it's not us. So we're the
with these skulls, obviously, because there's been a large number of elongated skulls found across a wide geographical region. I mean, do you know from sort of personal experience how difficult it is to tell the difference between a cradle-boarded skull and a skull from one of these other types of hominids? Is it something you can literally kind of look in your hand and say, well, this skull's got signs of cradle boarding, or is it does it require testing, or how do you understand that to be in terms of how difficult that is to tell?
Well, one of the things that really stands out in the difference are your suture lines. The suture lines that hold your plates of the skull together. Some of the elongated skulls that are actually cradle boarded, the plates of the skull are forced either over the top of one of or underneath one. So there's definite signs that you can see where the bones are shifted off their suture lines, and that's one of the ways. And then another way is there was another method of creating the cone head type skull, and that was creating a very tight hat, a sock type hat that they pulled down over the infant's skull, and slowly as the skull grew, it would grow into that shape. But excuse me. But the pictures that I've seen of the Paracas skulls and in the Lima museums, there's major differences. Some of them have one suture line that runs across right above the forehead. Some of them have just two suture lines, and they are symmetric, but they're completely different. So you have some skulls that are bulbous on either side with different types of suture lines than what we have. I mean, our distinct skull that we have now is completely different in the makeup. Holes that are in the bone in your skull, jaws, above your nose where your nerves and your blood vessels go in to feed your brain and feed muscles inside your jaw. They're actually in different positions, and sometimes they have 2 to 4 more of these outlets and inlets in through their craniums. There's a lot of signs that says that there were different species of these elongated skulls also.
Yeah, I mean, I saw the documentary you referred to, actually, and it was for the Discovery Channel on Unexplained Files, for anyone out there that wants to take a look at that. But yeah, they did some testing on I think it was on Waikiki, and I'm not sure if it was on any other skulls, but as I recall, they did testing on Waikiki, and that they did quite extensive checks to see whether or not there'd been cradle boarding. They had obviously a specialist in skull morphology. They had a dentist looking at the teeth to see the aging, and they also had in there somebody that was familiar with encephalitis to see whether there was any deformation in the skull from this. And then, of course, the genetic testing, and that in the particular results they got, they were able to establish that the mother had been, well, a normal human woman from, one of the local indigenous groups, but that the father, the patriarchal line of the DNA was really anomalous, and they weren't able to match this up. So it appeared in some way that it was a hybrid, potentially, of a normal person and an unknown hominid being that was different enough that they couldn't really place it. So obviously for people out there that haven't seen that, I would just sort of refer them to that, have a quick look at the short documentary from Discovery Channel, because that was really fascinating, and it kind of did what was failed to be done in respect to the testing you mentioned, which I think was with Brian Forster and his contacts in the US, that they were hoping to arrange some detailed testing, and that didn't really happen as such, did it? So unfortunately, there is at least this Science Channel testing. That became a bit of a debacle, didn't it? A bit of a disaster, I suppose, for not just for him. A lot of people were very upset.
Oh, I wasn't going to mention his name, but now that you did, yeah, man, that turned out to be an embarrassment, to be quite honest with you, because watching it unfold, see, I distanced myself after that rather quickly. That and a few other reasons from being connected to the guy. But yeah, just watching it unfold, and the sensationalism and the embellishment that was being put on something that really wasn't done. I mean, I don't believe they tried to hide it, who he was sending these DNA samples to illegally. They were trying to keep her quiet. I'm not going to mention her name, but she was involved with the Bigfoot fiasco also, the DNA testing on it, which never came about. So, it was a scam. In my opinion, it turned into a scam, and it wasn't what I ever wanted to happen. I just we're out to find the truth, and this kind of stuff right here just really makes it hard. It tarnishes us, the independent researchers out here that are really trying. It makes us look bad.
Fundraising's no easy thing either, and with any disaster like this, it kind of puts people off funding another similar kind of testing. So it's unfortunate. I guess we were lucky in that the Science Channel went in there and arranged the testing themselves and did it all in Peru, which I guess was the key difference, because it gets around those problems of taking samples outside of the country where you need all of these special permissions, and then you get into that sticky situation, whereas I think that they wisely did it all actually in the country, and so they kind of evaded a lot of the red tape and the problems. So I think that's why that was able to be done in the correct way, where the results were given out and nobody got in trouble. And so yeah, I'd say to people just to have a quick look at that when they have time, and they can get the kind of the summary of what was done if they skip through the documentary. It's not long, it's about 20 minutes, so if they have a look online for the unexplained files on the Paracas skulls, they'll be able to see that for themselves. But what do you make of this idea that perhaps the father is an unknown being? Do you tend to be drawn more towards the idea that this is a lost type of human, or that perhaps it really is an extraterrestrial? Combining what you've seen in your research with stories you hear in Peru, which way are you drawn at the moment for who that paternal being might have been, and how would you fit that into the story?
Well, as much as I've really swayed away from the ancient aliens theory, because there's so many of them that are just full of, you know what I'm saying. But as far as it goes, my opinion is very it's very possible. We are looking at an alien being, and when I say alien, I just say because that's the only one that we've really found, like Waikiki. I showed you my picture of the puma I found earlier. If you look just right of that paw that's sticking out there, and zoom in on it, and take a look at that shape that's on the cliff face there, and compare it to Waikiki, it's almost a direct match as far as shapes, size, the whole 9 yards. So I'm thinking, with the other evidence we have here, also of a race of small beings. I don't know if they would be considered humanoid at the time, but we definitely find it in the Haunted Pancha layer, where we have stairs for little people. Okay, and Anne, who is 4'11", finds some of them to be even a little too small for her. But there's places where I've been on those little stairs and I've had a hard time navigating because I'm too tall. I'm 6 foot tall. And then right next to them, you have these steps that I have to crawl up one at a time. You know what I mean? It's not like I can step up them. I have to actually take myself and lift myself up each step. So we have both here. We have all these signs that we had this very big race, and then there's more signs in some areas of the little ones. So were they Earthlings?
Funny, isn't it? Yeah, so they've got these. So I was just quickly adding that. I know that Steve and Evan have talked about this in Australia, haven't they? That the local indigenous people said they lived alongside giants and little people in the same way that you're describing the evidence in Peru. So it's kind of interesting to see that that's I guess a history or a mythology that exists in other nations. The idea of these three sizes: the big people, the average people, and the very small people.
Right. Well, as far as the elongated skulls, we're finding the large ones and different varieties of them all over the planet. As far as these little ones, the small people ones, the only place I've actually seen any of them would be Peru. And I don't know if the rest of them are being passed off as an animal or something to that effect, but we know by the molars and stuff from the ones that are here. Like in particular, there was a big controversy between the orthodontist that was brought in to check the teeth. And the first one they brought in, he just looked at him and said, "Those are teenage molars, yada, yada, yada," and he turned around and walked off. Well, they brought in another expert, and he took the time to check the teeth out, and he came back and he says, no. He says, these are full-grown adult teeth. Well, the first guy came back and they had a little chat, and red-faced as he could get, he did admit that he was wrong. Because he walked in with a preconceived notion that, there's no way in the world that this could be what I'm looking at. So,
yeah, that's one of the problems, isn't it? Sort of expecting to see something, so you're unable to see other things. It's a problem in any area of controversial research, isn't it? Really, that people don't want to see something controversial.
Yeah, and one of the things about, I did notice while I'm thinking about it, there's a comparison between Waikiki and a few of the Paracas skulls, is the thickness of the skeletal plates. Waikiki's skull, who was a full-grown 2-foot adult, okay, his skull is only about 1/8 of an inch to 3/16 of an inch thick.
Right. So something strange going on there.
Yeah, and there's a couple of the large elongated skulls that follow that same pattern, but they might be, a little bit thicker. But I mean, some of those elongated skulls, God, man, they're like a quarter of an inch, half-inch thick. They're big, thick skulls. It's not like, it's undescribable at this time to me.
It reminds me a bit. I mean, when you're talking about these, particularly the idea about these very thin skulls, it reminds me of the Star Child skull that Lloyd Pye investigated for a very long time until his unfortunate death with cancer. But in that case, again, the skull was extremely thin but very, very hard, and it seemed that the material of the bone was slightly different, almost like tooth enamel.
That's the Star Child skull for sure. Yeah. Tooth enamel. Yeah. And it had fibers. Didn't have some kind of fibers that run through that?
That's right. Yes, and again, in that case as well, they did some testing which seemed to prove that the mother was, a normal indigenous human from, that region of Mexico, whereas again, the father, the paternal line, just came up as, no match on the in the computer systems, in the databases. So it's kind of funny, isn't it? Again, we have this you can match the mother. So we know that these unusual beings are developing from a human female egg, but right. that either there's been mating with an unknown species or something else where there's been advanced technologies used to put genetic material into a human egg, in which case we don't really know if these were truly hybrids or if they were wholly something else that was injected into a human egg, and so hence we have this trace of human. But
let me step back. I'm gonna step out on a limb here.
Sure.
Take the saw out of my hand, okay? But you asked me about this alien presence. Well, when you really get down into it, in the Sumerian texts, you hear of Enki and his sister Ninhursag, I believe is the way it's pronounced. I'm not, the pronunciation might be off, but they were geneticists, and they did a lot of dicing and splicing according to the texts and stuff. But in Peru, these are things that really stood out after I started getting into the possibilities that the Sacred Valley, and especially all those sites in the Sacred Valley, goes all the way back into Genesis. They did a lot of dicing and splicing. So when you really look at the names that are used in the Quechua language and the names of the towns and actually the name of the Inca, you come up with Inki. Okay, different spellings. You have Ica, you have Inky, you have, there's a bunch of them. I can't think of them right now. But when you really start looking at some of the diversified genetics that I witnessed, I mean, you can see it, in their bone structures and everything, their features, that there has definitely been some kind of splicing that went on in some very ancient times. And the injection into the egg, that could have been one way to do the DNA splicing. It could have also been done in other methods, that are beyond our comprehension. We know how to squirt some juice into a female egg now and pretty much do anything that they want to do at that level. But as far as what's been done to us, it's undeniable that we are the product of their image. How does that go? The Elohim, they say they created us in their image. So that could be what's going on. We have all these dead species out there. The denizens, I believe is how it's pronounced. You have the Mungo man. You have the Coast Swamp man. You have the Cro-Magnon that went extinct, basically. That's what they say. But where are they? Did our DNA incorporate them back in? Where did they go?
Yeah, and it seems that every few weeks or so in the last year, and they found evidence of yet another, mysterious hominid, of varying ages, but particularly in sort of China, Southeast Asia, and the Australia region. But it seems that there's, that they keep finding the odd jawbone or leg bone or something from yet another hominid, and this human family is growing bigger and bigger. And
what's helping us too, to show how deep these time layers are going, is that fact that they are finding them, but also the dates that they're putting on these things are a little bit more realistic, I think. There's a couple of them that are punching 200,000. A couple of them are really punching millions. I mean, millions of years. There's, like you said, there's so many of them right now popping out. You can't keep track of all of them, but some of the numbers are really staggering, to say the least. That they're saying 100. Well, Klaus is saying 120 million years on the hand bone and the foot bone. The hand and the foot bone, but.
What's your kind of take then on the when you look at these sort of Sumerian legends and the tales of Enki, and do you look at these as being as star people or an advanced human civilization? Because obviously that's an area of controversy at the moment. I mean, there's a lot of, well, I suppose in the ancient alien subject, there's an assumption almost that the entire subject is the Anunnaki and these tales about sort of Enki, and but what do you see that as being this sort of, is that become a bit of a misnomer? I mean, do you feel that this is an ancient civilization of humans, or do you see an alien involvement in terms of ET in this story, or what's your kind of reading of this situation with these Anunnaki and the Sumerian legend?
First off, I'd have to throw the alien out of it, because I don't believe they were aliens. Okay, if anything, they could have been travelers, interstellar travelers, like the texts say. But the gold part and fixing Nibiru and all that, I don't know if that's symbolic or not. But from the rest of it, I do pick up either they were number one, the most advanced civilization that came out of Mu, or they actually were jumping planets. I mean, we know now, and I'm a firm believer, we had life on Mars, and I think part of that life that was there came to Earth once Mars was destroyed. So I don't know if we can call them aliens or actually interstellar travelers, or if they actually came from within our own solar system as a matter of survival. I mean, Velikovsky, his theories and the electric universe theories are becoming more and more of a reality, that life could have been right here in this solar system. So are they alien? If that's the case.
That's a good point, because I mean, if they were, if we once upon a time, we don't know the dates, but if there was a point where this solar system had human habitation, throughout the solar system, whether in artificial domes on moons or obviously on a Mars that could support life, and some of these other moons actually look like potentially they may be able to support life. What would we call these beings if they were to come to Earth? I mean, do we call them aliens, or are they simply us living on different lumps of rock? I mean,
when you take in the Vedas, what is it, the Mahabharata?
Mahabharata.
Yeah, that one right there. When you take in all those accounts and you add up a lot of myth from around the world, and not just myth, I mean, like the Dogon, those people are fascinating. They knew stuff that we didn't find out until the 50s and 60s. And then lately, I think we found out something else they told us. So, I mean, we have all of this information that's from around the world that tell us that people came here. I mean, I'm part Cherokee, and my people talk about them coming down. I mean, you have the Hopi talk about them coming down. You have these images and paintings and stuff that can only be explained that, well, it must have been somebody in a spacesuit. So to deny it, I think that's become the fast road to hell, basically, because you can't deny it anymore that there was travel, whether they were alien. We have the proof that we have different species that we can't explain. Where did they come from?
Yeah, and there's this matter of that so many of these supposed ET look very human-like. We can't say necessarily they were exactly the same as you and I, but most of the imagery is of humanoids. Not of beings that are so radically different from us. That we wouldn't be able to recognize them as life, even. But they tend to be very similar, which in itself is sort of suspicious, isn't it? That are we not perhaps dealing with cousins of ourselves that are traveling around?
There's the theories going around that a lot of these aliens, and these body snatchings and these experiments and this kind of stuff that is supposedly happening to these people who are snatched and stuff. It seems like what they're trying to do is morph themselves into our bodies, if that's what they're doing, because their bodies, they've got a head, they've got arms, they've got legs, they've got eyes, they've got a mouth and all that, but they don't have what the human body has. And that's the ability,
repairing a missing part.
it's the ability to live in this kind of environment for a long time. Yeah. So if, that's one of the theories out there as to why some of the stuff is going on, but what I'm talking about actually happened probably millions of years ago. That's when it started, because we have the evidence of all the different hominids and everything, so you can't discount it.
I tend to think that with this kind of the ET influence that it's whether they are variants of humans or not, but this kind of ET influence, you have to go back a fair way to sort of to require it, and then after that, most of what's happened, these megaliths and stuff. I have to remain open-minded and say that, I don't know if some of them perhaps weren't, constructed by an ET, but we don't need them to have been. That, there's been enough time for humans to have risen up to a high level of technology and created most of these things themselves. Because when you start factoring, as you have, the longer period in which humans have really been on this planet and the past civilizations that existed, we don't need to kind of keep factoring in ET help because we've had enough time to actually create these technologies ourselves. Is that kind of a fair kind of summary for you as well? Do you feel something on that lines?
No, it's exactly that, because when you get into the church word definitions and stuff that he translated off in the call tablets about Narayana, which was the seven-headed serpent, which I think they call Kali now. But Narayana, the seven heads on that serpent actually represent 7 different periods of time that Mu existed. And within the text, it tells that there was the periods of time where they rose to very, very high levels of intelligence and the whole 9 yards, technology and everything. But then something would happen to that period and they would go back to ground zero and restart. So I think this is where our 7 days of creation myth comes from that's in the Bible, because these 7 periods of time were the rises and falls of our previous world that we had here before, which is, I call it the whole planet. I call it Mu. Anne agrees. We've discussed this many times, and with the holes that we found in the research, it all points to that the planet was called Mu. That's our opinion at this time, anyway. But when you look at it, and you see these artifacts that are only left in stone. We have a few of them that pop up here and there that are gold or that kind of stuff. But it's showing us how old civilization, whether it's humanoid or if it was seeded by some aliens or whatever, by using what was on the planet and splicing it, as some of the texts are saying, then we should roll with it a little bit so we can go deeper and investigate a little deeper and accept what we find, even though we really don't want to hear it, but we should at least know it.
So what do you see as being then the causes of these downward slopes in our human journey? Obviously, from what you've said, there's probably been at least at least a few of them, perhaps, but at least one or two major ones. I mean, what do you see as being this cause of the ending of the week, if you like, of creation that brings humanity back down? Have you looked a bit into the kind of the disasters and the human engineered problems that do this? I mean, what's your current take on the causes of the falls?
Well, I found that there's a guy and there's a band out there. I call them Random Selection and the Catastrophers. Who knows what's going to fall out of the sky? Even the ancients, I believe, have left us time capsules, like the Burroughs Cave artifacts, where it looks like they knew an impending disaster was coming, and a bunch of cultures brought their artifacts together and put them in the Burroughs Cave, which leads us to GT, Göbekli Tepe, where it was intentionally buried. We have other sites around the world, and I think Peru is one of them, where some of the sites were intentionally buried. So, it's like they knew something was coming at various times, because look at us now. We have the ability to reach out into the far reaches of space. Who's to say that these people, from what we're reading, didn't have abilities to match that or even had more? Because they had to have known that some of these catastrophes were coming in order for them to create these time capsules and to preserve some of these sites like GT. And then when you add in the fact of all these underground cities that are being found all over the world, they had to have known that, well, it's time to go and hide inside, because it's not safe out here.
Yes, I mean, that's true. I mean, it's not the natural desire of a human being, is it, to live deep underground in a tunnel? You have to have some sort of compelling reason to really move your whole settlement deep into, the dank caves below the town.
The thing is some of these caves, man, they're not dank. I mean, they would have been a luxurious place to hide when you really get down to it. One of them that pops up, and this scenario happens quite a few times, is like at the Bosnian pyramids. They've, of course, about the scan. They've been removing all this debris out of the tunnels and stuff. Well, one of the things they discovered are these tunnels are above a ancient, and it's still running river, underground river, and it's actually generating its own oxygen.
Ah, right. Okay. Yeah, that's quite intelligent.
Yeah, well, the thing is, this happens not just in Bosnia, but it's a known phenomenon in many places, many caves and stuff. The water, molecules, I guess, break up and it produces oxygen. So yeah, there's ways for people that could have lived in a somewhat luxurious hole in the ground compared to others, of course.
Yes, I mean, some of these cities in Turkey, they're enormous. I mean, it's not like being in like a natural cave system. I mean, they've really hollowed out chambers and, air sort of vents. And as you say, it's not a case of really living in squalor. I mean, they've gone to some great effort, haven't they, to make it as comfortable as they could, suggesting that they would be there for some period as well, that they must have banked on being there for years rather than days, kind of thing, that they've gone to enormous trouble.
Well, some of those cities, they housed over 100,000 people with their livestock.
And that's pretty incredible. I mean,
yeah.
You can imagine here.
I'd say so. Well, going back to the Grand Canyon and Kincaid's Cave, the Hopi, their migration story is they arrived where they are on the leaves of a palm. And what that boils down to me is they were either on reed islands or palm islands, kind of like the Urus do in Lake Titicaca. They live on these massive mats of woven reeds and stuff. And they were perishing. They were something else. I don't know exactly the whole story, but they were dying. and the ant people came out from, I believe it would be Kincaid's cave, and brought them inside and saved them. And then eventually, when things became safe enough for them to go outside, then of course they were kind of told, okay, it's your turn to go. But they tell that story about the ant people.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty sort of fascinating, isn't it? The idea that perhaps that there were those who had prepared and those who hadn't, and so that they were fortunate enough to come across some of those that had already been ready for the disaster, whatever it was that was causing this. This.
Well, see, that's that point right there, though. It kind of opens the door to some layers in time that are being compressed, in my opinion, because I've studied the inland oceans that used to be, actually they went all the way up into Colorado and the mountain ranges, all the valleys and everything, all the way up into Washington too, was an inland sea with these mountains and stuff. And when you look at the receding time, there was a major recession, of course, during the Ice Age, and then also about 80,000 years ago, the front range of the Rocky Mountains was a swamp and an inland sea. Well, that went all the way into Kansas, which is the heart of America. I mean, right in the middle of America. And then all of a sudden, about 80,000 years ago, it started receding. For the Hopi to arrive in the southwestern United States, in my opinion, there would still have to be some inland sea there for them to be washed in. And it sounds like they rode a tsunami, so we're talking a long time ago. And the only real major catastrophe that I have on record at this time, besides the one in 13,500 years ago, that could have done that kind of water damage, would have been what we're calling the Mount Toba event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which obviously was an incredible supervolcano event.
Right. So we got these big holes in these myths and legends, and the only way to fill them is to say, whoa, we got to step back in time a few zeros.
Yes, I mean, I think we keep having to go further back to explain where we're at. With your work now, obviously you've come to a point where you're putting it down into print, aren't you? I mean, I understand you're preparing a book, but it is not finished. I mean, what aspects of your research are you looking to bring together then into this book? I mean, will it be covering the Paracas skulls and your field trips in Peru, or is this more about Mu? Or can you give the listeners a bit of an overview of how you bring all this together, and what it is you're looking to, I guess, streamline and create in the book over the next few months? I mean, where are you kind of going with that?
Well, actually, what my book is about is opening doors, to expand people's perspectives on how to look at this ancient time without it actually scaring the crap out of you. Because when you really, you've been in this mindset that, it's 6,000 years and now we've actually jumped up to where it's possible of 12,000 years and this kind of stuff. But when you start thinking of millions of years, a lot of people, it kind of shakes them up. So what I've tried to do, and I'm trying to do, is to bring out the things that are basically just steps in a staircase to lead whoever, if they want to see the past for themselves, and to see it in a way that will open the mind, open the eyes, and open us up to the fact that if we don't know our past, we can't know our future. And that's part of our problem, is we don't know our past. A brief thing about amnesia is I'm an amnesia victim. I was in an accident and took a blow to the head. I could remember my name. I could remember a couple things. I forgot all my music at the time, even songs that I wrote. all my, that kind of stuff. So that was in 1992, and in the interim, I fought it, and I regained a lot, but it just takes so much time to dig through the amnesia syndrome, and I believe Graham Hancock might have said it years ago, that we are suffering from a case of amnesia. And through my research, I agree with him 100%. Some of it is actually a PTSD. You know what I'm trying to say? It's a part of a global post-traumatic stress syndrome, and a lot of it's been blocked out, but some of it's been hidden intentionally. And that's what I try to bring to light is, some of the culprits that are behind this hidden history. And they're not people that you would really expect them to be. You're supposed to trust them and this and that, but you have your religions and your governments and all these people that are trying to suppress the history. From the masses knowing what's going on. So that's what the book is about. I point out a lot of things about the global maritime culture. I've done some extensive research into that. The cocaine mummies, of course, is what triggered that search, because cocaine only comes from one part of the world. How did it end up in Egypt? Yeah. And you know what I mean? I've done a lot of that, and that's what helped lead me to places like Australia. I mean, I've done some extensive research into the claims that are made on the carry-on glyphs walls about how the Egyptian brothers made their way there, and it opened the door to even deeper ancient connections, maritime connections. So that's the direction it goes. It's the Paracas skulls. Unfortunately, they've been tainted. Okay, I don't really use them anymore, other than research connections to other things.
I guess there's other examples of strange phenomena that are less problematic to use as your examples than those that have already attracted so much I suppose heated arguments.
Yeah, and and USOCs, we're a grassroots group, and we are, we're connected. We're on 4 continents, and we have some good independent researchers. Some of them have papers, most of us don't, but we've been, like Anne, she's been studying this stuff for 30 years, something like that, global connective stonework. And I've been doing, since I was just a little kid, picking up bits and pieces until about 8 years ago. I really started getting pretty serious into it. Of course, we have people we have go-to people if we have questions, and they give us straight answers, even if it's not what we want to hear, that's what we get. So the book kind of touts some of our work that we've done together as a team.
So, I mean, you're expecting that to be probably another 6 months' work, from what I understand, isn't it? Because you want to go back to Peru to finish up the book. That's correct, isn't it?
Well, I'd like this one here. I think I'll be able to finish before I go back. I'm pretty close. I just there's a couple things, of course, that's just got to go now, because so much new information has come out since I last re-edited my book in March. And
it's a process, isn't it?
Oh man, I this Peru thing is there's some stuff down there that I just can't explain yet, and I don't know how to go about it, explaining it until I.
Bob, I'm gonna have to sort of quickly stop you there and just ask people to follow your work, because we're going to run out of time otherwise. So I'm going to just quickly say to people to follow your work there on therogueresearcher.wordpress.com, because that's where at the moment you're putting all of your articles that come out. Isn't that right? That's your main website. And then on Facebook is USOKS, the USOKS. They'll be able to find you there. So just say a quick thanks there to Bob, and thanks to all of the listeners.
Thank you for being with us tonight. Please join us again next Monday evening for Extraordinary Phenomena Investigations Council's Epic Voyages. I'm Roger Peacock for Epic. Until next time.